did you want to talk more about some of the resources that are here in the Keys? Bonnie, is that?
Yes. Did you have some things you wanted to talk about, Sarah?
Okay.
Maybe Deborah said you did.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but
I'm trying to figure out which part you are wanting me to say, and then I'm wondering if maybe you would like to start us out.
Well, we've been very fortunate to have Sarah here at St. Columba because of her background in psychology, for working with troubled youth. But one of the things that we talked about, and I think this is one of the things that your program really addresses that we don't have so much in the Keys, is sort of that moving from dependence, that closer environment to, as we watch our kids, 15, 16, 17, 18, setting appropriate goals of independence and, reporting in. What is that called? Structure and independence. What is the good level, and how can we in our programs, begin to facilitate that?
One of the ways of thinking about this, when I'm training greener therapists, whether it's with adults or kids, in a way, good therapy is essentially good parenting. And that, I think, one of the key things in that is finding that balance between, structure is in children's lives and teenagers' lives is how they know that the world is safe. If you know that you have a bedtime, if you know that you have to come home, if you know that there are expectations on you, that's how we know that there are rules in the universe and we know what's expected of us. At the same time, adolescence is, if you think of it developmentally, this is where a child is preparing to leave the nest. This is when they are preparing to get themselves out into the world as independent adults. So we do have to start to allow for some independence in that. And finding that balance can be really challenging. It can be really challenging for the parent. It can be really challenging for us in all of our agencies. Where do we set those limits? How do we set those limits? How do we know when to adjust those limits? How do we know when one is working, but we have to wait for it to work? And how do we know when to cut bait on something? And I think that is one of our biggest resources when we are working, whatever agency, whatever capacity, whatever relationship. I think being willing to work in that balance becomes critical. If we think about, as we're raising kids, if we think about when they're little, if they're about to run into traffic, we can grab them by the hand and say, come back here. If you try and do that to an adolescent, they will bite you. Something bad will happen to you. And a lot of times what I try and use the analogy with parents, that parenting an adolescent is like, remember in bowling alleys when the little kids came up and they put the bumpers in? And they could throw the ball, and the ball might bounce back and forth a whole lot of times. They're knocking that thing back and forth, sort of like what teenagers might be doing with their head, but it kept them from doing a gutter ball. And I think that's how we really need to think about what we're doing when we're working with adolescents. We need to make it safe for them to screw up without having it become a gutter ball. Because some of the screw-ups, when we talk about there but for the grace of God, because we really by rights should have been dead 13 times over, that's what these kids are facing all the time. Finding that balance is hugely important. Has anybody had any experience where they realized they were way out of balance as far as that discipline versus independence? Anybody go all the way to the extreme on either? Deborah has. Okay, would you like to share yours or shall I share them for you?
You need to share them.
I had this wonderful day, finally, I had a wonderful day that Deborah called me and said, I am not the disciplinarian in our youth program. That there's a certain amount of chaos that occurs when you leave me alone with the children. And I called our after-school woman and said, what happened? She said, I left the hammock house for 15 minutes to go to my office. And when I came back, the entire craft room was on the floor and there were goldfish crackers sprinkled about, and the children were circling the table in some sort of relay race. And Deborah was saying, oh. And we were all really glad to hear that, because she's usually on me going, you're so mean, you're so mean. That, you know, and using that as a really good example of, she was trying to have fun with the kids and let them have some freedom and let them play and explore what it's like to throw every item out of the craft room onto the floor, which I think was pretty entertaining at that moment. But what we saw was that, and you probably all have seen this with any age kid, as they started to not have those rules, they don't even look comfortable at that out of control. They're discharging energy and running around. And if you've ever had a 7-year-old that you decided you would reward them by letting them stay up an extra half an hour, and they get miserable. They're cranky, they're fussy, it's awful for them. Sometimes not having that structure, while we think that we're giving them free time, we're actually giving them chaos time. And that's really true with adolescents as well. We can have a lot of independence, but we can structure that. We can use those bowling alley bumpers. The only thing I would add on this is, I mean, I had a very not terribly traumatic family, but there wasn't enough structure in my family. They think it's hysterical that I am the one teaching the structure in life, because I was the one that allowed everybody in my adolescence. And I know Tom has had some really interesting parenting experiences, because his oldest daughter had an outside influence in not his home, but her biological mother, that made for some not so consistent parenting. Whereas with his younger daughter, he was able to establish a lot of that balance of discipline and independence, but we got through. I mean, you can regain it, you can reteach it. You got to keep in mind, though, that if you're working with somebody who has not had the experience of somebody putting structure in my opinion, or in my experience, where I work, it's like putting the law down, they're going to have to test that. They have to bang against that to see if that's real. That's natural. That's okay that that's occurring. I don't want to trust something unless I know it's going to stand either. And so, you know, we're teaching new habits and new understandings and relationships, and we're teaching a normal adult relationship where there's going to be mutual expectations.
And I think sometimes if you have that person that's there for you, even if you go through a ton of hard times, in the long run, it works out.
I just have a question about how long is the program for Casa, is it Valentina?
Casa Valentina.
Casa Valentina. How long can you stay in the program?
So the program is structured to be 24 months. It's a 2-year program, but that's not to say, I mean, like foster care, once you're 18, that's it, you're done. But we try not to replicate that. You know, as the 2 years is up, we're hoping in that 2 years, we really prioritize education, that they leave there with some sort of vocational trade or certificate, a degree, or are really on their way, that they can support themselves and really be self-sufficient after that 2 years. Now, let's say that they're not, because it may take longer. We've had some girls that have stayed for 4 years, 3.5 years. I have to tell you the average length of stay is about 1.5 years. But we work with, you know, it's such a small program and so grassroots that it's very intimate. You know, we have very individualized plans for each resident, that it's not black and white 24 months and they're out. So it's a breathable, you know.
You all are privately funded?
Yep. So we get a lot of our money from individual donors and grants. So we don't have to work through that government bureaucracy as far as the red tape and having HIPAA, you know, I mean, we do follow HIPAA laws, but having so many red tape in place in the bureaucracy, we don't have to work through that. We do what we want. We're a private organization.
So when the girls graduate from the program, and then they're going to be going off on.
They get their own apartment.
Get your own apartment.
We do have an aftercare program.
Oh, that's what I was wondering, because my girls are, my daughter is 26, and then my next daughter is 21. So right at, your age, and you kind of think about the things that you do as a parent to help with that transition to now you have your own apartment. And
There's a second whole nother transition,
yeah,
right?
and so how do you manage that?
We have an aftercare program that's up to a year afterwards, where we still meet with them regularly for a week. And that's not to say that even after then there's not some sort of informal relationship. Because even like with mainstream families, now the statistics are showing that adults aren't really self-sufficient and independent until the age of 30, especially now with this economy. So we have that same expectation. They're done 2 years. Most of the girls here are 21. They'll be 23, 24 by that age. That's not to say that they're still completely ready. I still call my mom for $50 for gas every once in a while.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. Sure you are.
You get that certain tone.
So informally, we get phone calls. We have weekly meetings, life skills meetings that we have, and all the time we see our veteran residents or our alumni, we call them, come back.
Yeah, and for
And
more like social events like
Right.
Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Exactly.
Everyone comes back to
We have a Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa party every holiday season. Thanksgiving is coming up. We take trips. Again, it's so grassroots and so small that I think we're able to deliver a really good quality of service to the girls.
Emma, were you done? I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, because I know that specifically with Samuel's House in Key West, it's a different program. It doesn't deal directly with foster children, but they help women and children, and they've just transitioned into doing families, transition out of homelessness. And they have a pretty decent success rate, but in talking with an executive there, she said, we'll never turn a woman away. She may work her way out of Samuel's House, where they provide housing and they have counseling, and they may work their way out, but then they stumble and fall again.
Yeah.
And so they'll welcome them back. Yep. Have you had any cases like that where you?
Rose, do you want to speak?
You didn't see Katie behind you.
So again, there sometimes, believe it or not, you would think we have like a waiting list. We don't. There's a lot of kids that are aging out of foster care that they don't want anything that even remotely smells, looks like, tastes like, like that system. Because we do monitor, we do check in academically and things like that. So sometimes we've had residents that come and they say, you know what, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and I want my independence and I want to do what I do, and it happens. Youth, young people, sometimes they don't do so well, and they're free to come back if they haven't burnt some bridges. And Rose, I don't mean to call you out, but she was with us for a while in the beginning and said, I'm ready and I think I'm gonna go, and she came back and we welcomed her with open arms, and I'm glad that she's back. And again, so that ties back into that whole trusting long-term relationship, right? She knew what to expect from us. We were predictable, we're consistent. She knew where we would be. Our numbers don't change. And we were there if she needed us, or if anybody needed us again.
Can I ask you, Rose,
Yes.
what that meant for you?
What, coming back?
Well, just having that support there, like I tried, because I'm sure that everybody in this room has tried something, stumbled, and had to start over again. So what did that mean for you to be able to go back to that support system?
New chance. It meant a lot, because when I left, I went to the real world. I wanted to be grown, basically. I'm 18, you can't tell me what to do. I'm grown, but I didn't know once you leave the program, you was gonna face the real world. You're gonna get your own apartment, had to pay the bills on time, had to do everything on your own. So it was bad. It was terrible. But I kept in touch with Emma, and I kept telling her that I'm thinking about coming back. I told her that for a good 3 years that I was coming back. I'm like, I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna come back. But she's like, you have to be ready. But at that time, I was not ready. I thought, I'm like, my mom like, yeah, I want to go back. But mentally, I wasn't like ready. I wasn't ready for that stage. So this year, I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's time to go back. I need that support. I need the structure. I need them to help me get back on the right track. So I just called them, like, I'm ready to come back. She said, you sure? I said, yeah, I think so. so I'm back.
Well, I think you have to give Rose a lot of credit to really
Take that
she's
courage
smart
to-
enough to realize that, hey, I need help here and I need to go back. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Or to admit it. I mean, you might have realized it for 3 years, but could you really say the words? That's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say, oh, I guess I can't do this right now.
Well, and I think you really help educate us in that, you know, Reverend Deborah and I had an experience. One of my boys made a horrible decision and pulled out of the program, and we were really worried for him. We knew that things were not okay.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, I think he's going to come back. I think he's going to come back to us. I didn't anticipate how thoroughly he would come back and how quickly. But we've had 2 or 3 now, and sometimes they sort of see us as a team. We are, it's like we're a team. We're doing it. But
I'm the nice one.
she's
Yeah.
the nice
Really proud of that.
So a lot of times when they do come back, they'll go back with her and first, and then they'll come and find me because I'm probably going to say, what are you thinking? You know, what is wrong with you? You know, all the stuff I'm not supposed to. But I think that you're helping us understand that it's so important. We might not like a choice that somebody's making. We might be really scared for them and have it come out as, I'm really angry at you that you are making this choice. But, you know, I've even watched with Tom and his parenting where eventually his eldest daughter decided you were okay. She didn't even think you stunk anymore. And, you know, and that's really important for us to learn, is that, you know, no matter how frustrated, no matter how worried, no matter how scared we get, we've got to have it where you can come back to us.
Takes time, and yeah. But it's okay for them to, you know, spread their wings, fly. If they want to come back, come back.
Time and space.
Because still cognitively, you know, anyone, it's still developing. You're taking risks. Everything's a risk in life, and it's good to know that there's that safety net to come back to or fall back on if need be.
Yeah, I just want to say that I just think you're all remarkable.
Yeah.
And I think you're remarkable, and everyone offering these services are just amazing, because I think there's a whole layer of traumatized children. There are a lot of adults who have grown out of that, and so I think it's very fortunate, even though, yeah, it's fortunate. Because you grow up in a household that's just, there is no parental support, there is no social services support, there's no Casa Valentina support, and you're on your own. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Lots of ways that it can happen.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us, Lonnie.
Emma, girls, this is Rose, Rosalind, Kate. Thank you all so very much. It has been wonderful.